I always believed I knew who I was. My name is Danilo. I'm 31. My whole life took place in a small town where everyone knows each other. My parents, Ola and Teshiana, were ordinary, good people. Dad worked as a bus driver, Mom as an accountant at the local school. They were never overly emotional, but I never felt unloved. It's just, we didn't have warm hugs or deep conversations. But everything changed after the funeral of Grandma Halia, my mother's mother. She lived alone in an old house outside of town. We weren't especially close, but I used to visit to help her with chores. Her death wasn't unexpected. She had been sick, but something inside me still broke. After the farewell, I stayed at the house a bit longer to help Mom sort things out. We cleaned closets, packed clothes for charity. I opened an old chest in the bedroom. I remembered it from childhood. It always held things dear to Grandma. Embroidered linens, postcards, photos. Among the pile of dried letters and old newspapers, I found a small box. Just a regular candy box. But inside, an envelope. Yellowed, with rough edges, but untouched. On it, my name. I felt like lightning struck me. For Danilo, to be opened if I'm gone. My hands were shaking. I didn't tell Mom. I hid the envelope in my pocket and went to the pantry pretending to take out the trash. I closed the door. I opened it. A letter. From Grandma. Handwritten in shaky, elderly script. Danilo, forgive me for not being able to say this while I was alive. Your truth isn't where you've been looking. Teshiana is not your biological mother. And Ola, not your father. You were abandoned. At a church. A baby wrapped in an embroidered blanket. I couldn't stay silent anymore, but I also couldn't say it out loud. Pray, and forgive me. The truth is in the old wardrobe in the attic. I felt sick. The ground beneath me disappeared. I read the letter 5 times. Mom, not my mom. Dad, not my dad. Abandoned? Like in a movie? Is this some kind of joke? I sat on the floor for another 10 minutes before Mom called for me. It was time to go home. I said nothing the whole drive. In my head, only one word repeated over and over, attic. The next morning, I went back to Grandma's house. Told Mom I wanted to pick up her books. She didn't object. I climbed into the attic. Dust, cobwebs, old boxes. Everything looked the same as always. But one wardrobe, covered with a blanket, stood out. As if it had never been there before, though it clearly had been for decades. I opened it. On the top shelf, another envelope. And a folder of documents. In the envelope, a birth certificate. But not mine. Name, Danilo. Surname, different. Not mine. Parents, unknown. Date of birth, matches. But place of birth, another village, 100 kilometers away. I'd never been there. In the folder, a record from an orphanage. A photo of a baby. On the back, handwritten with a ballpoint pen. Found near a church. Mother, unknown. Child has a birthmark on left shoulder. I have that exact birthmark. I felt like throwing up. I sat right on the dusty floor. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Who am I? I returned home when it was already dark. Mom asked why I looked so pale. I said I was just tired. I had no strength to talk. I needed time. But one thing I knew for sure. I would find the truth, even if it breaks me. I didn't sleep all night. Scenes from my childhood kept looping in my head like a broken cassette. Mom in the kitchen, Dad behind the wheel, our trips to the sea, New Year's Eve. And now it all had a bitter taste of lies. I tried to recall anything that could have hinted I wasn't their biological son, but nothing. They never let on. Never slipped. The next morning, I packed up and drove to the village listed on the birth certificate. The village where I was supposedly born. I didn't tell my parents where I was going. I didn't even know what I'd say. The village turned out to be tiny, just a few streets, some rundown houses overgrown with weeds. No people outside. I found an old library. An elderly woman with glasses and a kind, wrinkled face greeted me. Good day. Could you tell me, do you have any archives or records about an orphanage that was here in the 90s? She looked at me suspiciously at first, but something in my eyes must have softened her tone. There was such a place, but it closed a long time ago, before the 2000s. Most of the children were moved to the district center. Why do you ask? I lied. My wife is tracing her roots. Her late mother was supposedly from here. We're trying to learn whatever we can. The woman nodded. She gave me stacks of old newspapers and a worn-out registry book. I flipped through the pages, not really knowing what I was looking for. And then I saw it. A baby boy, approximately 2 to 3 weeks old, found in a box near the Church of St. Nicholas. Dressed in a white embroidered blanket. Birthmark on shoulder. Temporary name, Maxim. Sent to orphanage number 4. Maxim? Was that my name? At least at first. Something twisted in my chest. My whole life suddenly felt like a puzzle someone had assembled wrong, and now I had to start over. I found the church. An old wooden building near the forest's edge. It was closed, but nearby stood a small house, the priest's home. An elderly man opened the door. Wrinkled, gentle eyes. "Excuse me, were you here in the 90s? I was. Who are you? I think I might be the boy who was left at your church." He froze, silent, then said quietly, "So it's you? You're alive? A woman brought you." She never showed her face, wore a dark scarf, black coat. I thought she was scared, but she kissed you on the forehead and begged me to take you. There was an icon in the box. I still have it. He disappeared into the house and came back holding a small, darkened icon. On the back, written in pen, "Forgive me, my son. I have no choice." I couldn't hold back the tears. I stood in that yard and cried like a child. Maybe because, deep down, I still was one. Back home, I paced my room for hours, stared at childhood photos. And then, finally, I broke. I walked into the kitchen, where Mom was sitting. "Mom, I need to talk to you." She flinched, dropped her spoon. "What happened?" "I was at Grandma's attic. Found a letter and a birth certificate. I know you're not my biological parents." Her face turned white. She didn't speak. Her eyes filled with tears. "Mom," I could barely get the word out. We were going to tell you, but we were scared. You were so fragile. So ours. I couldn't. Forgive me." Before I could answer, Dad walked in. He looked at us and understood everything immediately. "He knows?" He asked softly. Mom nodded. And then Dad said, "If you want, I'll tell you everything. But first, you need to know one thing." He stepped closer and placed his hand on my shoulder. "We love you, and we have never seen you as anything less than our son." Dad poured himself a glass of water. His hands were trembling. Mom silently wiped away her tears, though they kept streaming. I sat at the kitchen table, fists clenched. I was shaking, not from anger, but from shock. So many years, and not a single word. "It happened unexpectedly," Dad began. "That day, you came into our lives like a miracle, like an answer to a prayer." I said nothing, just listened. Dad looked at me with pain in his eyes. "We couldn't have children. We tried for 10 years. Treatments, attempts, despair. And then a woman we knew from the district told us there was a boy at the orphanage. No one wanted him. He had been found in a box near a church, with a birthmark on his shoulder and no documents." Mom lowered her head. "We came and saw you," Dad continued. "You were asleep, so tiny. You grabbed my finger. I knew you were mine. We spoke with the orphanage director. Honestly, it wasn't even a legal adoption. You were simply given to us. Back then, no one kept records, no one checked. You just disappeared from the registry." "And Grandma?" I asked. Mom looked at me through tears. She knew. She sensed something was wrong right away. I told her, and she promised to keep it secret. But I think she carried the weight of it for the rest of her life. I walked out of the house. Just left, without saying a word. I felt sick. My ears were ringing. I had been lied to. I had been protected. I had been loved. All at once. I drove without a destination. The road dissolved my thoughts. Maxim. Am I Maxim? I didn't know who I was anymore. My whole foundation was a lie. But were their touches false? Their actions? I didn't notice how I ended up near the church, the one where I had once been left. The doors were locked. I sat on the bench near the entrance. The sun was setting. Shadows passed by, and then I saw her. An old, thin woman in a black scarf. She walked slowly, leaning on a cane. Her gaze stopped on me. She tilted her head. You look like someone." "Very much so." I stood up. My heart pounded. "Who do I look like?" "Marina. My daughter. She lost her baby many years ago. She couldn't take it." "You're not Maxim?" I could barely breathe. "You knew Marina? What was her last name?" "Shevchuk. Marina Shevchuk. She passed away, but she left me a photograph and a letter. She said, 'If you ever see a boy with a birthmark on his shoulder, that's my son.'" She pulled a worn envelope from her bag. Inside, an old photo of a young woman, one who looked so much like me. The same eyes, the same shape of face. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "That's her? That's my mother?" "Yes. She had a hard life. She gave birth to you in shame, without a husband. Her family turned away from her. She couldn't afford to raise you, but she didn't want to leave you in an orphanage. She brought you to the church, believing you'd have a better life. I stood there, holding the photo, speechless. The world I had known completely collapsed. But inside me, something else was forming, understanding. I wasn't abandoned. I was saved. They didn't leave me out of indifference, but out of love. Painful, desperate love. A few days later, I returned home. Mom and Dad were silently sitting in the kitchen. When they saw me, they froze. I didn't come to argue, I said. And I didn't come to forgive. They said nothing. I just want to say thank you for giving me life, even if you didn't give me birth. I don't know what comes next, but I know you're my parents. And she's my mother too. I simply have 3 parents, and all 3 did what they could. This story doesn't have a happy ending, but it holds the truth. And truth, even if painful, is always better than a beautiful lie. Because only by knowing who you were, can you choose who you want to become.